Hey, this is TK O'Ryan, man. You are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the interactive interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com.
So what you gonna do?
Let me talk to you, dummies.
Oh, yeah.
You're where it's at.
If you're smart like me, you gotta listen.
And if you don't listen to it,
I'll come out of your computer and body slam your ass.
Don't be a Melvin.
I will scar you.
open your third eye.
Woo! It's gonna be cool. Oh, what a rush.
It's showtime!
We had a lovely conversation.
To the interactive interview. Interactive Wrestling Radio. The Epicenter.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. It's a 2-for-1 special this week. My name is James Walsh, by the way, and joining me on the Newsmaker line is I guess I can call him my co-host. It's kind of like my talking to buddy.
I like that title.
Mr. Patrick Kelly.
Yeah, I want that to be my official title on the what? Yeah.
You know, way off topic, and this is what we always do, but you know what I saw the other day at the toy section at Target?
What?
Teddy Ruxpin.
Are you shitting me?
I am not shitting you. I'm serious.
Oh my God.
So, that thing is frightening.
Oh, it was frightening when I was a child. Like, I remember thinking, that thing looks like it's going to murder us all in our sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. But by the way, if you want to know how I got to that, it's because I said talking to Buddy, and then I started thinking about teddy bears, and then that's how I ended up at Teddy Ruxpin. That's my thought process. Going from a wrestling intro to Teddy Ruxpin. Anyway, yeah, no, that was always freaky.
Come dream with me tonight.
What used to freak me out, though, is that the tape would reach the point of of the story where he wouldn't be talking.
Uh-huh.
And his mouth would still be moving. And that really, when I was a kid, freaked me out because it's like the mouth is still going, the eyes are still blinking, and there's nothing coming out. There's no noise. So it's like, at some point, it's going to go, I will destroy you and everyone you love. Anyway, so I said,
time.
They were. Everything was excess. Everything was better. Everything was better. But on this episode, it's James Walsh, Patrick Kelly, and we're going to be joined by two guests. We're going to air this same intro for both guests because why not? We have from Impact Wrestling the recently re-signed Monster Abyss, and from Ring of Honor, from the Kingdom of Ring of Honor, it is TK O'Ryan. So two really cool interviews with two very, very interesting, both very intelligent guys. So I think you guys will enjoy these interviews. We just were talking off air. Abyss might be the last of the originals for Impact Wrestling.
Yeah, they just celebrated their 16th anniversary, and I'm thinking, going all the way back to that first show, like, who is still there both in front of the camera and behind the scenes that was there on that original show? And I think Abyss might be the only one.
He might be the last of the Mohicans. Yeah, he might be the last one. Last man standing.
JB's not even there anymore.
No, JB went to WWE, and a lot of people, you know, and Conan said this, and it's true. A lot of people saw that as a really bad sign when Jeremy Borash went to WWE. But, you know, look at what they did. And I want to give them credit. And I'm saying this not to blow smoke, not just because they might be listening, but because I mean this. Look at what they've accomplished. Impact Wrestling for years was going through atrophy. When Hogan left, when AJ left, when they lost some of the mainstays, as well as some of the big names, Sting left. When they lost all those guys, a lot of people said they were dead to rights. And then they had the struggle with the TV deal. They ended up on Destination America, which to this day, if you put it on, you can still see rednecks chasing ghosts. I never understood that choice. But then again, you get something like Ring Warriors, this new company called Ring Warriors, and they get a WGN America TV deal. That's unbelievable. How'd that happen? But that's way off topic. And then they got Pop TV, and they've been back building ever since the sale of the company to Anthem. And I think everything that they've been building towards and growing towards, and all the changes they made kind of came into a culmination this past Sunday, or a week ago Sunday now, at Slammiversary, in what has to be the most critically acclaimed pay-per-view they've done in 10 years.
Oh, I would even, it's the first time in a long time that they've put on a show where the feedback is almost unanimously positive. I haven't heard or read too many negative reviews of this pay-per-view. Take that for what it's worth as far as what do a bunch of, critics and nerds on the internet, what do their opinion really matters. I know I'm throwing us into that mix, but it's really amazing that after everything they went through and after all the strife, all the trouble, all the snake bites and everything that company has gone through, that they've persevered, they've got a new creative system in place, and they're finally on a path that they're getting back to having an identity and putting on fun and exciting shows.
I look forward to Impact every week, and I always watched, and I want everybody to know this. Even though, I'm singing their praises now about how great the show is, I always watched, even when it was not the greatest show, even when it was, for example, James Storm throwing Mickey James off a railway bridge and stuff like that. Not the best stuff that I've ever seen. I always watched Impact because I always saw that there was great potential there, and now they're realizing a lot of that potential. So I'm so excited for Impact Wrestling to be getting the respect that they deserve and to be back on a footing where people are, even as much as 6 months ago when they were in Canada just after Bound for Glory, a story broke that they were hiring actors to be in the audience to get the desired crowd reaction that they were after. And the news headlines, I will never forget this, were something along the lines of, hey, how much do you have to be paid to go see Impact? And I thought, that's a real jerk comment to make, right? I guarantee you those same people.
Was it true? But was it even true? I'd never heard the story.
That was the story, that they had hired actors. And I'll tell you why, because they wanted people to react a certain way to stories. That's what I always assumed it was anyway. And, you have trouble with that with Impact crowds back then. And now you don't, because now they're really getting into it. So, bottom line, though, I'm kind of off topic here. Those same people who are saying, oh, how much do you have to pay to watch Impact, blah, probably shelled out $50 to watch Slammiversary.
That all comes around. But, yeah, now I've watched a lot of wrestling this year, and I've watched a lot of different companies. I've kind of moved away from Raw and SmackDown and kind of focused on the shows that I enjoy week to week. And, New Japan has put on some great shows. Wrestle Kingdom was great. Dominion was great. The NXT TakeOver specials are typically very good. But for the first time in a long time, I could count the Impact pay-per-view among the best pay-per-views of the year so far. And again, like you said, it's been a long time since I've been able to say something like that.
Yeah, they had a good show a few months ago with Redemption. That was really good. That kind of was the precursor to what we saw as Slammiversary. But this one was like from top to bottom. It was like, okay, we have built-up match after built-up match after built-up match. No match was just thrown in, and all of them delivered. So
yeah, and there was also that, again, going back into this company's history, it felt like if something wasn't blowing up in their face, they would kind of get in their own way by booking something stupid. And that didn't happen on the show. It's like they just went out there and said, hey, let's just deliver the best show possible and not throw the banana peel in front of ourselves. And sure enough, you end up with a great show.
So I got a question to ask. If you did end up with a great show, it was somewhere between a classic TNA show and a late-era ECW show. And a lot of people hear late-era ECW and they think, oh, he's implying it's not in good shape and all that. ECW was never in bad shape. They had an owner who had his nose up the crevasse of the WWE, and that's the truth. Even Tommy Dreamer said so. And an owner who had no concept of running a business. They were still selling out everywhere, but they didn't know how to make money off the fact that they were selling out everywhere. And that takes a true idiot.
Well, the thing they say about Paul, he's a creative genius, not a financial genius. So,
well, there you go. Exactly. That's exactly true.
The skills are not transferable.
Very cool. My only crass question of the pre-show here. a lot of people online are comparing Tessa Blanchard physically to China. And I'm not seeing that as much as everybody else seems to be seeing that. Kind of wanted to get your take on that. What do you think? Does she have a China build to you?
No, she looks like a woman to me. So, I mean, I think Tessa's pretty hot. But
Thank you. Oh yeah. I mean, I think definitely. I think she's.
granted, I like dark-haired women, so I'm kind of biased anyway. But I was like, nah, she looks good. I mean, she's very muscular, but I think she looks like a woman, and a very attractive woman at that.
I agree. She's physically fit. She's definitely got an athletic build. But when I hear China, I don't necessarily think of the China from the adult films or China from
when she was
maybe
in Playboy.
the late era. Yeah, I don't think of those things. I think of the China that, was the man beast that was shaking around Terry Runnels.
Wasn't there a rumor going around that was obviously false, but wasn't there one of those wrestling stories where she was like Sergeant Slaughter's niece or something?
Yeah, that wasn't true.
I know it wasn't true, but wasn't that a thing that was passed around?
That was a thing. It's because of her jawline. She had a very similar jawline to Sergeant Slaughter, if you really compare them to pictures. But that's just happenstance.
Well, it's like that old story where the original Ultimate Warrior died, and when he came back at WrestleMania 8, there was a new guy playing the role.
Right. That was that was believed by a lot of kids on schoolyards for years.
Because he had like different hair, he wasn't as bulky as he used to be. So yeah.
Yeah, and if you actually read like the old Hasbro action figures, the back of the first one that came out in like 1990 said that he was 6'5", and then the one that came out like when purple trunks that came out in like late 92 said he was 6'2", said he was 6'2", and you're like, oh, well he's shorter now, so it must be a different guy.
Or they just stopped working you. Because as they say, take a wrestler's height, subtract maybe a couple maybe 1 or 2 inches, or in Hogan's case, maybe like 4, and you got his true height.
Yeah, I mean, they always said Hogan was 6'8", but he's really like 6'5". So.
Well, the story I always tell, go back and watch Rocky 3, they say he's 7 feet tall, and it's like, no, Stallone's just really short. that's
he
why
came up to his nipple, for God's sakes.
Say what?
He came up to his nipple in that movie.
Yep, sure did.
It was kind of weird, but I do like the fact that Stallone still tweets about that and puts over Hogan. That's really cool to see.
Oh, Stallone, he knows where his bread and butter is. And it's like Rocky and Rambo, man. That's what he's known for.
Yeah, I mean, if they ever do another Expendables, and I don't know if that's in the works or not, I wouldn't mind seeing a little love sent Hogan's way.
I doubt they'll make another, but then again, you never know. But you never know. They could do another Expendables, I guess.
It's not like it takes a great storyline.
Fair point. Nobody's expecting Citizen Kane.
No, they're not. And in the last one, if you saw the last one, some of the lines Stallone could have used subtitles because I didn't understand what the hell he said.
I didn't see the third one. The last one I saw was I saw the second one, which had Jean-Claude Van Damme as the villain, and they named him Jean Valon. I'm like, that's beautiful. I kind of love that.
The next one he feuds with Mel Gibson.
Oh, nice.
So that's Mel Gibson's the bad guy. He's the bastard international businessman that they end up with a big, huge fight in a building.
And
pretty
Ronda
cool.
Rousey's in that one, too, right?
Yeah, Ronda Rousey's in it. Not a big fan of Ronda
Rousey. You sounded so excited.
I just don't get it. It's like Brock Lesnar. I just never understood the appeal. With Rousey, it's kind of like, hey, she's an unattractive female Ken Shamrock. I don't get it.
To her credit, she's probably the best thing on the main roster right now, in that she's the only thing that hasn't been hampered by bad writing.
Okay, so what you just said reminded me of something that happened to me. I'm going to tell you this.
Okay.
I used to be a big fan of the WCW Live show, which was essentially a podcast before there was podcasts.
Right.
They were 5 days a week. They were pre-Nitro and post-Nitro. And post-Nitro was always the What'd You Think show. So WCW had a show in 2000, February 14th, Valentine's Day. WWE was unopposed. WWE was not on. I forget what it was, tennis or something. I don't know. Maybe the dog show. I don't know what it was. Remember when they used to get by the Kennel Show on USA? They used to get
Oh yeah,
bumped for that.
that was always so weird to me. It's like, who is there like a shared audience between WWE and dog shows?
No shared audience. I think they just legitimately did not think wrestling was worthy, so they replaced it with everything possible. In their defense, or in WWE's defense, WCW encountered much of the same crap when they were replaced by, NASCAR racing. And I'm not talking like big races. I'm talking about like races that don't matter. Thunder was often
listen to
replaced by-
Eric Bischoff's podcast. I hate to plug another show unless it's something good.
it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with the guys who
Go ahead.
were there and did it. When it comes to the guys doing shows like Eric Bischoff and Tony Schiavone and Bruce Pritchard, for God's sakes, we're not competition for them. They're the guys we'd love to interview. So, I don't mind plugging their shows. It's the shows that I'm in direct competition with that I have a problem with. But these guys, they're not our competition. They're guys I'd love to talk to, too.
Yeah, Bischoff, his is really interesting because he goes more into the production and the television side of things, more so than what a lot of other shows do, where it's all about the in-ring and the creative side. Bischoff focuses a lot on, like I said, TV production and the business side, and he brings that up a lot, where it's like the Turner execs, with the exception apparently of Ted Turner and nobody else, they all just look down and turn their noses down to pro wrestling. So it's something that they've always had to deal with.
Brad Siegel's a piece of garbage. If you want to stretch it out, why does WCW not exist anymore? Because Brad Siegel didn't want it to. But that's another.
Mm-hmm.
We can get into that, and if I ever talk to Eric Bischoff in ad nauseum on a really long interview, we've had him on the website for an interview with Pile Driver in the past. But
yeah, I remember that. I was still in college when we did that interview.
That's back in 2006.
Yep.
Anyway, my point was, they did the show. It was the February 14th show, unopposed. And what did they put in the matches? They put Hogan and Flair. And I think it was Luger and I forget who. And the main event was Sid and Scott Hall.
Okay.
And we were talking. It wasn't a bad show, and it sounds better to say now than it did when it happened. To say that though, I called up and I said, well, Hogan and Flair was probably the best thing on the show. And Bob Ryder, who, as far as I know, still works for Impact Wrestling, who's one of the guys who helped found it, said, and what does that say about this show? Bob Ryder was not a big fan of that episode. And what you said about Ronda Rousey being the best thing on the main roster for WWE right now, what does that say about the main roster right now? That's all I got to say.
Oh, it doesn't say much at all. There's a reason I'm not watching week to week, because it's just I just can't get into it anymore. A lot of it is just there's too much content to fill week to week for them. I mean, it's 5 hours a week. Guys get overexposed. I get sick of their stories. I get sick of like everything that they're doing. So it was just better for me to just walk away.
Absolutely. Well, another product we both like is Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
And we have a guy from Ring of Honor who is a rising star, had that horrific leg injury at the 15th anniversary pay-per-view where he shattered his leg. Unfortunately, that probably is his biggest claim to fame at the moment, but I guarantee you that won't be his claim to fame in a few years from now, because this guy has got some real potential. I got to tell you, I asked to interview him because I saw a spark there, especially when he did the episode with the gauntlet, with the trios matches. He was on commentary, and he was killing it. He was a lot of fun on commentary. So I asked, hey, could I interview TK O'Ryan? And they said, sure. And, man, he's got a personality. He's a hell of an athlete. He's got a look to him. It might be overshadowed right now because Matt Taven is the king of the kingdom, but I could foresee down the road, if they ever do the classic way that any team ever splits by turning them against one another, I could easily see Taven and TK having one hell of a feud. They got a lot of talent in that ring right there.
Well, it's funny you mentioned
Vinny
that.
Vinny Marseglia is no slouch either, by the way.
Oh yeah, his balloon gimmick got over really big at the show I was at. But it's funny you mentioned this about the Kingdom. You know, Matt Taven is the king right now and kind of getting the spotlight there. That was not the case when he was in the original version of the Kingdom, where it was more Adam Cole and Mike Bennett getting most of the attention. So it's almost like the Kingdom, they don't get the same attention that, say, the Bullet Club does, but they've got this nice little system going where they can cycle guys in and out. It's like, all right, the two bigger ones left, and then we can put Matt Taven in charge, and now he's rubbing off on these other two guys, and they're growing and developing into something special. So they got a nice little system there.
They do, and I've not been shy about the fact that I think Matt Taven is awesome. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. I think he's just now starting to really get the attention of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody else is now starting to say, hey, this guy is real good. This guy is really good.
Hey, if you want to see him do really well, that four-way match, he's in there with Jay Lethal, former ROH champion. He's in there with Cody, who's probably the biggest American star outside of the WWE right now. And the current champion, Dalton Castle. He didn't look out of place in there.
No, he did not. And I'll tell you what, he stole the show with one spot. And I like these little nuances that kind of make me go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
There's one spot where he has somebody rolled up. Forgive me, I don't remember who he had rolled up. And the referee was distracted. And playing to the conspiracy theory, by the time the referee turned, after he had him pinned for probably a 10 count, and the guy kicked out at 2, the way he stuck his hands out, had the look on his face, and stomped around like it was a conspiracy, and it got across just so easily, I was marking out. I thought, that is perfect. You could not have played that any better. That is what makes wrestling wrestling. That's what I love about it anyway.
It's always the little nuances that make things better. You can go out there and do shooting star presses. You can go out there and be the greatest mat wrestler in the world, but you got to be able to connect with the audience. That's what matters the most. And it's those little things like that that really set things apart from everything else.
Absolutely. And if you ask Cody Rhodes to this day, what's the best wrestling match of all time, he'll tell you Hogan and Rock. And he says he doesn't trust anybody who says anything else.
Really? That's first of all, that's a great answer. Because I love that match too. Because that is just master puppet work from, at that time, probably the two guys in the business that could do something like that.
Yeah. I mean, and there's talk that, Hogan's back, he's going to work Cena. And I said, well, Cena's not The Rock. And Hogan's also not the Hogan he was even in 2002. So I'd be worried about that, but we'll see.
No, they're not going to do that match. I don't think so. If anything, they're probably going to do Cena Taker again at SummerSlam, which, okay.
Boy, I can't wait. Can't wait. You have by the way, I mentioned this to Abyss, and we're going to wrap up here, guys, and get us to the interviews. But I mentioned this with Abyss. I'll put you over here. You said WWE did a pay-per-view just a few weeks before Slammiversary called Extreme Rules, and there was pretty much nothing extreme on it. And then Slammiversary hits, and it's like, holy crap. So look what they were able to accomplish. You got, by the way, the two companies we're talking about coming up real soon. In fact, Impact Wrestling is doing the press conference this week with two guys that are going to be taking on the Young Bucks on the Chris Jericho Cruise, Impact versus Ring of Honor. It's going to be LAX, Ortiz and Santana against the Young Bucks. So that's pretty darn cool.
That's very cool. I kind of want to get on that cruise.
I'm sure it'll probably be on Honor Club or something. They got to have it on somewhere.
Oh, sure, yeah. But it's still a cruise, so, you got to black out time and get the time off from work and, be willing to fork over some dough because cruises aren't cheap.
Over $1,000. I think it was over $1,000 to get on there.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like it's worth the price. So, but yeah, going back to Slammiversary and the Extreme Rules deal, that Pentagon Sami Callihan match, I feel like I've seen just about everything in wrestling. That match made me cringe, and I loved it. It was one of the best hardcore matches I've seen in years, and it legit gave me the willies.
And speaking of facial reactions, even though the language barrier is a problem for me, the facial reaction of Pentagon when he kicked out of that move on the chair.
Mm-hmm.
When Sami kicked out of that move on the chair and Pentagon had the open mouth, shocked look on his face.
Yep.
That probably made the match. Again, little nuances, but it probably made the match.
I think, and I love him from Lucha Underground as well. I think Pentagon is one of the best foreign stars out there in the U.S. market right now. He looks like a star, and you talk about the language barrier. I think both Lucha Underground and Impact have found a great way to get around that. Just subtitle his promos.
Yeah, I mean it's not quite the same, but it is. They've done a good job with it.
Yeah.
And he works for MLW as well. Let's give them a little love. They don't give us very much
Mhm.
in response, but he does work for MLW as well. And they had a big show. In fact, they just ran, I think it's the same venue that Impact's running for Bound for Glory. They just ran for Battle Riot. So there you go. They're doing pretty well themselves. There's a lot of great stuff out there.
Yeah, funny you mentioned that. I might be going to another Ring of Honor show in October, and I'm toying around with the idea of going to Bound for Glory as well. So we shall see.
Yeah, I've been to a Bound for Glory. I went in 2012. It was a highlight for me. I loved it. It was the only time, even though I've been to a dozen, it has to be at least a dozen MSG shows, I, for whatever reason, always missed Hogan. So it was the only time I ever saw Hogan was at Bound for Glory 2012. And to say I marked out a time and a half would be an understatement.
That's cool, man.
All right, guys. Well, we talked about a little bit of everything here. So whatever your poison is, if you're here for Abyss, if you're here for TK Orion, or if you're here for nothing but a good time, poison reference. Hope you guys enjoy the interviews, and thank you again for joining me here, Patrick. I hope you enjoyed our little chat.
Oh, I did, man. Anytime you want to do this, I'm on board.
This is the king of the kingdom, Matt Taven, and don't be a Melvin, and get into the Wrestling Epicenter.
Available now in the archives at interactivewrestlingradio.com. It's our exclusive interview with the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
So no, we respect each other in the ring and what we've done, and there's a respect there. And even though if he would say something bad, he kept coming back to that respect thing. People had told me, but there's a respect there. But it's business. Business is business with me and him.
This classic 2005 interview can be heard at WrestlingEpicenter.com and InteractiveWrestlingRadio.com.
This is Ring of Honor's Ian Riccaboni, and you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. On the Newsmaker line with me is a member of the Kingdom of Ring of Honor. He is TK Orion. Mr. Orion, are you with me?
Hey, what's going on, man? I'm right here with you.
I'm glad to have you, man. I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be a lot of fun. We had the King of the Kingdom on just a few months ago, and, man, he was a lot of fun. So hopefully this will live up to expectations.
Oh, I don't disappoint you, man.
All right, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about getting the call and ending up as part of the Kingdom and Ring of Honor. How cool was it to get called up to arguably the number 2 promotion in the entire world?
Well, man, it was awesome because it was something I'd really had my eye on for a while. It was something that I'd really been putting in the time to get to Ring of Honor. So I can actually remember, like, very specifically, I was with Mike Bennett when I originally got the call that I'd be working for Ring of Honor, and found out that I'd be debuting as part of the Kingdom that Matt Taven was putting back together. And honestly, it's kind of weird because I'd only been wrestling for about 2 years at that point when I made the jump to working for Ring of Honor full time. So I hadn't had this like very long, drawn out romantic love affair with wrestling for years. That had led to this one defining moment. It honestly, it just felt like something that I got thrust into, but I felt more than ready for.
Wow, well, that's excellent, and you've done a great job. You guys kind of came out of nowhere, and man, you guys have picked up right where the Kingdom had left off before Mike Bennett had left, and Matt got injured. So, man, you guys have done a great job with the 6-man. I guess every interview you do from now on, people are going to ask you this question. Of course, I'm talking about the 15th anniversary. What happened? What happened with that move? What went so wrong? And did you know right away that it was as severe as it turned out to be?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll tell you, it was as simple as I jumped too far. I mean, it wasn't. The guardrails weren't too close, or I mean, there's been all kinds of different conspiracy theories out there about Ring of Honor and unsafe work habits, yada yada. But The truth is that Ring of Honor is an incredibly safe place to work, and that the only thing that went wrong with that moonsault is I just jumped too far. I was it really amped up. It was a big pay-per-view moment. We were out there with Dalton and the boys in Las Vegas, and so all the pomp and circumstance was there. It was the 15th anniversary. It was just a big night for the company, and everybody could feel it. So, being a pretty excitable young man at the time, I went for something, and I've nailed that move dozens of times. It wasn't like that was my first time ever doing a moonsault. It's something that I've had in my back pocket. It's a move I know I can kind of just pull out whenever I need to. But on this particular night, I think I was a little too jonesed up, and we saw what happened. As far as how bad it was, I mean, dude, I knew my leg was shattered instantly. There was no secrets there. I mean, really, the bigger issue was I was trying to figure out if my other leg was broken. So if you watch the tape, you can actually see I grabbed hard on my right leg. Right away, as soon as I roll over, I grab my right leg, I kind of shake it out a little bit, and then I go back to the broken one. So it was more of a please God, don't let both of these things be broken, because I know one is for sure.
Wow. Well, it was scary to watch, and I said this, when I was watching it happen. I said, "Oh, something went wrong there," and you guys did a good job of, figuring out what to do at the end of the match. I credit, the incredible professionalism of everybody involved in that match. So that was great to see. But I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you're back. You're back in the ring.
I'm fine. I'm better than ever. I'm stronger than I've ever been. And as far as professionalism in the ring, I mean, you're talking about between Matt, Vinny, Dalton, the boys. I mean, it's over 30, pushing 40 years of wrestling experience in that ring. So, all credit to the guys that have been around that knew how to help me when I really needed it.
Very cool. And speaking of that, Matt mentioned something along the lines of that the medical attention that you were receiving there in Vegas kind of sucked, and that you had to get back to Massachusetts to get it really sorted out properly. What happened? I mean, what was he talking about? He said they had to hold your leg together.
Well, I'm going to stop you right there. The medical treatment that I got in Las Vegas would have to improve a lot to suck. And when I say it was bad, I fear that you will not respect how bad it actually was when I say that. No, it was a nightmare, man. It was a living nightmare. The long-form story of the Kingdom in Vegas, getting through that hospital is completely insane.
Wow.
You kind of need all three of us to get the full effect. But the short form of it is that, for starters, it took the ambulance over an hour to get there. So I was laying on the cold Sam's Town Casino concrete floor for an hour waiting for an ambulance to come. When the ambulance did get there, we took the ride. The funny thing is that the ambulance ride itself, like on my hospital bill, was something close to like $3,500. An Uber ride from the hotel to the hospital would have cost me $30, and I got there a lot quicker. So,
wow.
For starters, there was that, and then once we actually got to the hotel, man, I mean, I was in the there was just talk about no sense of urgency. I mean, they would have thought I had a paper cut, man. I mean, I walked in there. I mean, not for nothing, but I fell from a height that, like, you should be scanning for major head trauma and things like that, and that's a pretty dangerous fall. There could be other injuries at play internally or otherwise. And basically, I got there, and I ended up sitting in the waiting lobby for 2 hours in my underwear in the main lobby with other, like, just random people walking in and out. Like, not hospital people, but, like, people off the street coming in and out, walking past me half naked in the mud room, essentially. When they finally did put me into a room, they did nothing to sedate my pain or to help. They didn't even set my leg. I mean, I was at that hospital for probably damn near 4.5 hours before somebody came and set my leg. It was a living nightmare. As soon as I saw the doctor that had to see me because I went into the emergency room, I asked for I asked us to sign out immediately. I was getting out of there. They wanted to do the surgery in the morning, and I said, I'll take my chances flying across the country with a broken leg and see some doctors in Boston.
Wow. Well, I'm glad like I said, I'm glad that the recovery was a success, and you seem to get back in there pretty quickly for an injury of that magnitude.
Well, it's funny because I hate to, like, discredit myself, right? Because it's never something you should do, but But I mean, it is just a broken leg. I mean, as nasty as that looked, it's not like I gutted it. Like Matt's injury was a whole lot worse than mine because he tore his knee out. I mean, that's a big time mobility thing. There's a lot of finite little nerves and things like that have to get adjusted. You know what I mean? Like that's just a messy injury. So, for me to I say it's kind of silly to just break my leg. I mean, it's a bone. I mean, they glue it back together, they sew you up, and the day I had my surgery, I was able to walk on it. It wasn't like a good walk, and it was a painful, slow, laborious struggle down the hallway with somebody leaning on my shoulder, but it can be done. And so that's what it comes down to. Is that I had a great support team as well. I had a lot of guys that were helping me with everything that we did, and it really accelerated the process. As far as like getting back into the ring quickly, I mean maybe a little sooner than I probably should have, but I felt like with the injury basically being once I had the surgery, the rod was in there. I mean it was stable, it was ready to go. So. I felt like the more I pushed it, the quicker I'd be able to get back to full strength. And maybe for a little while, it might have hurt me in the sense that I was moving around with hardly any strength or energy. And it's funny because if you look at my body then, you look at my body now, you can tell like the physical effect it had on me as well. But I really felt like getting in the ring and moving and pushing to have it heal faster would be the right thing to do. And it turns out, I guess I was right.
There you go. Absolutely. So was it cool for you to kind of step back into it and then get your guys' six-man tag team titles back when you defeated SoCal Uncensored? Was it kind of cool to get right back to basics, back to square one?
Man, it felt like all was right in the world when we won those titles back in Lowell. The build-up to it had been so intense where, we had been screaming that there was a conspiracy in Ring of Honor against the Kingdom for so long because I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with wrestling, and when a champion loses their title, they're supposed to get a rematch. That's just wrestling 101. It's been in the books for 100 years that way, and it didn't work that way for us. So to basically fight, scratch, and claw for a year, only to have this really cool Genesis moment in basically our backyard with the fans completely on our side. Was a cool thing. It was definitely all is right in the world, I guess would be the overall feeling.
Very cool. And that conspiracy, you guys play that so well that whenever anything doesn't go your way, that you can draw to that conspiracy, and it just fits. So you guys have got something really cool going with that conspiracy theory. I wanted to put that over.
Well, thanks, man. But I will say that calling it a conspiracy theory implies that it might not be real. Go back and watch the tape. It's very real. Everything we've ever said has always been true. The Kingdom is a lot of things, but we're not liars.
Absolutely. All right. So the cool thing that you guys did recently was you were with Ian Riccaboni and Colt Cabana on commentary, and it was a lot of fun to listen to. Did you enjoy being behind the microphone?
Oh, I loved it. I felt like a pig in stink, man. That's my absolute comfort zone. Put a headset on my head and let me talk into a microphone. I was born for that. So to do it for Ring of Honor television in the Hammerstein with Ian and Colt, who are an awesome commentary duo. I mean, that was awesome. Absolutely loved it. And I loved to mess with Ian Riccaboni too. I kept like putting my finger in his nose, messing with his tie. I stole his glasses a bunch of times. I kept knocking his headset off his ears so he couldn't hear anything. Love it. Absolutely love it.
He's one of the best in the business, Ian Riccaboni. Really is.
He is. And if he wasn't such a dork, he really has something going. You know what I mean?
All right. So you had an opportunity to wrestle Cody Rhodes one-on-one at a recent event. What did you take away from the experience of working Cody one-on-one?
I took away that I can hang with the best guys in the world, and that I knew I could to going into the match, but hopefully my biggest takeaway was that anybody who saw the match knows that I'm just as good as a guy like Cody Rhodes, and it really just comes down to the right lighting and the right context, and having a chance to go against someone like Cody in a place like Nashville, which is a historic wrestling town. I mean that. It's hard to come up with bigger spots than that, and I just hope that people took notice of what happened in that match.
Absolutely, and another match that has yet to air on TV, but unfortunately in the age of spoilers, we kind of heard a little bit about it, is you guys defending the six-man tag team titles against the Bullet Club, against Cody and the Young Bucks. Thoughts going into that match as it airs on television?
I'll tell you, an absolute classic television main event spoiled by a rotten, stinking blown call. I won't give away everything, but I will say that the Kingdom Conspiracy is extremely real. It is extremely alive. And in Atlanta, there is the most clear-cut, 100% undeniable evidence that it is real. And you'll see it firsthand, main event from Ring of Honor television in Atlanta in a couple weeks.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Speaking of those guys, speaking of Cody and the Young Bucks, what do you think of what they've accomplished here with All In?
Well, I'll tell you, I think Cody Rhodes is a big stinking turd, but I like the Young Bucks an awful lot, and I've really come to respect, who they are and what they do. They're the trendsetters. They're the standard bearer, and for my generation of wrestling, I think 25 years from now, you're going to have guys saying these tag teams, they don't make them like they used to make the Young Bucks, So I think to work within the same company as them and to be as involved with them as I tend to be. God, it feels like me and Vinny end up wrestling the Bucks, at least every other month, and it's just that I love it, and I'm not going to sit here and say it's an honor, but it's definitely something that I appreciate the ability to work with those guys as much as I do.
Very cool, very cool. So I got to ask you, I know you're a Massachusetts guy. I'm actually a Northeast New Jersey guy, so I'm really like a New Yorker guy. But it's got to be pretty cool to know that Ring of Honor, the company you're working for, has broken and will be working for or in Madison Square Garden.
Oh, it's unbelievable, man. I mean, and talk about a sign of the times. With Ring of Honor being as hot as it is and being, certainly the coolest wrestling company on the planet. There's no doubt about that. And there's no doubt about how much talent is in the Ring of Honor locker room. There's no doubt about our ability to put on world-class shows. And I think that when Ring of Honor comes to Madison Square Garden, there's so many eyes opened up right now, but that's going to open up the ones that might still be a bit half shut.
All right. So here's my most controversial question of the interview. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you prefer the dark ring or the light ring?
Yeah. Man, that's interesting. That's kind of a hot topic in the Ring of Honor locker room at the moment. So the dark ring I think looks cool, but it's a bit much on TV, where it's with the black ropes, black ring, black curtains, black guardrails, black mat. You know what I mean? It's a bit dark. And you get a lot of guys like to wear darker colored gear these days, so it gets everything. But the lighter colored mat, it does add some cool contrast. I mean, it is pretty sweet. But it has the negative of halfway through the show, you see all the sweat stains and everything on there, and it's kind of rough looking at the end of the deal. I guess if I had to pick one, I think I like the black mat. I think it's a cool. It sets Ring of Honor apart from other wrestling companies that are televised, and that it certainly gives a very a distinguished look. I'll say I like the all black everything with the red turnbuckle pads. That's a cool look.
I agree, and I didn't think it looked too much black until I saw the Virginia tapings on TV. Then I thought, oh, this looks a little dark, but
I don't know when
dark.
It's a little dark. I like the red turnbuckle pads. I think it would be cool if the Ring of Honor logo had some red in it, like the classic, the old school. I mean, now the Ring of Honor logo is kind of that all white stencil. Yeah. But it'd be cool if it red in it like the old school logo from the early 2000s. It might freshen it up a bit.
Very cool. So I've done a lot of interviews with a lot of different companies over the past couple weeks: Impact Wrestling, Lucha Underground, MLW, and of course Ring of Honor with yourself. We live in a very weird time in wrestling history where there's almost an open-armed approach, where companies, whereas in the past they might have been at each other's throats, they're kind of opening their arms and, hey, let's work together, let's do something together. Thoughts on the way that wrestling is changing into this kind of a big melting pot of everybody working together?
I think I think that what's going on right now is nothing new. It's something old in a new lens, and that you get a lot of people, they talk about the territorial days of wrestling, and I think right now you're kind of getting a modern, as close to what the modern version of that is going to be right now, and that like on the indies, you've got like this extensive independent wrestling network now. A lot of these companies are connected, where a lot of the same wrestlers work at the same companies, and it creates sort of like a territory system. I obviously wasn't a part of that time in wrestling, but I certainly heard the stories and seen a lot of that stuff on tape and all that. But the point being that you're kind of getting back to a day where the wrestler is more in charge, and it's less about, you got to work for one of the big three companies in order to make any money. And now it's kind of getting back to the days where wrestlers can make a living by being professional wrestlers and doing what they do better than others. And I think that's awesome. And as someone who got into wrestling because he's not interested in having a boss, that's a really cool. And I'm excited. I'm really excited for what the next maybe 3 to 5 years in the wrestling business are going to look like.
Me too. And it sucks, by the way. You're 7 years younger than me, which kind of makes me feel like an old fart. So I appreciate that you talk about the territories in the past tense, because it's like.
Well, and don't feel too bad about it, because I'm also 5 years younger than Taven, and I make sure he never forgets about that. So.
All right. So my final question for you is a little bit of a cream puff. It's kind of a simple question of, what do you think the future holds for Ring of Honor?
For Ring of Honor, man, I don't think you're going to see it slow down anytime soon. I think that Ring of Honor is still on a dramatic upswing. I think that Ring of Honor is it's the future of wrestling. And, I mean, you're seeing it even if you look at WWE programming these days, and it looks like a Ring of Honor show from 3 or 5 years ago. I mean, Ring of Honor has been the trendsetter for pro wrestling for a few years now. I think it's going to continue to be so. And you're going to see it become a bigger and bigger name in America as a mainstream product.
I'll tell a lie, then I'll ask you one more question. What does the future hold for TK O'Ryan?
Hey, man, you're talking about future world champion, baby.
All right. Hey, before I let you go, can I ask for one last favor from you?
Yes, sir.
Do you mind if I ask for a station ID, just saying this is TK O'Ryan and you're in the Wrestling Epicenter?
Hey, this is TK O'Ryan, man. You are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is Father James Mitchell from NWA TNA Total Nonstop Action, and you are listening to the interactive interview.